I don't like unnecessary words, but there are moments that change your life forever. This was one of those moments. That day I decided to pick up Emma, my wife, from work. I just wanted to do her a favor. We were supposed to go out for dinner after a tough week. The January cold had turned brutal in Chicago, with temperatures dropping below zero. Emma's car was in the shop, transmission problems that would cost us nearly $2,000 to fix, so she'd been taking the bus all week. After 12 hours at the construction site, my muscles aching from hauling lumber in the frigid air, all I wanted was a hot shower in our couch. But I knew how much Emma hated waiting for the bus in this weather. So I drove to Kellerman Pharmaceuticals, where Emma had worked as an executive assistant for the past 3 years. The pay was decent, better than what I made most months with my independent contracting business, and it came with health insurance, which had been a lifesaver last year when I sliced my hand open on a job. The Kellerman building was all glass and steel, the kind of place where the lobby probably cost more than our entire house. I felt out of place the moment I walked in, still wearing my work clothes, faded jeans, steel-toed boots caked with dried mud, and my heavy Carhartt jacket with the frayed cuffs. The security guard at the front desk eyed me suspiciously until I explained I was there to pick up my wife. Emma Reynolds, I said. She works for Mr. Blake on the 14th floor. He made a call, then handed me a visitor's badge. Wait here. She'll be down shortly. I was waiting at the reception desk when her boss, Mr. Blake, came out of the elevator with Emma and 2 other employees trailing behind him. At first glance, he was a classic alpha boss. Expensive suit that probably cost more than I made in a month. Confident gait, self-confident smile. His watch alone could have paid off our mortgage. Robert Blake had been Emma's boss for just over a year. She'd come home with stories about him almost daily. How he'd landed the Singapore deal. How he'd torn into the marketing team for a subpar presentation. How the CEO considered him the future of the company. The stories had an undercurrent of admiration that sometimes made me uneasy, though I'd never admit it. When Emma spotted me, her expression shifted from professional composure to surprise, then pleasure. "Jack, what are you doing here?" Before I could answer, Blake's eyes flicked over me dismissively, taking in my work clothes, the dirt under my fingernails that never fully washed away, the 3-day stubble I hadn't bothered to shave. His lip curled almost imperceptibly. He glanced at me and, without taking off his glasses, said to Emma, without even looking at me, "Is this your husband? Does he even have a job? Your wife deserves better." The lobby fell silent. The receptionist suddenly became very interested in her computer screen. The 2 employees with Emma, a young man in a crisp suit and a woman with a tight ponytail, exchanged uncomfortable glances. It felt like I was hit in the head with a butt. The casual cruelty of it, the dismissiveness, like I wasn't even worth addressing directly. I could have said something, could have told him that I ran my own business, that I'd built custom furniture for some of the wealthiest homes in Chicago, that my hands might be rough, but they were honest. Could have mentioned that I'd put myself through trade school while working nights at a warehouse. Could have pointed out that his Italian shoes probably cost more than I spent on clothes in a year, but at least I could change a tire or fix a leaky faucet without calling someone. But I didn't answer. I just took my wife's hand and left. Her eyes were burning with shame and anger. We were silent on the way home, the only sound the rattling heater in my truck fighting against the January cold. Once inside our small 2-bedroom house, the house I'd renovated with my own hands when we bought it 5 years ago, Emma exploded. "That arrogant, prejudiced asshole!" She paced our living room, still wearing her office clothes, the dark blue skirt suit she'd found on clearance, and altered herself. "How dare he speak to you like that? And in front of the entire lobby?" I hung my jacket by the door. "Forget it, Em. It doesn't matter." "It absolutely matters. I should report him to HR." I shook my head. "And then what? He's a senior VP. You're an assistant. Who do you think they'll side with?" Emma stopped pacing, the fight draining out of her. "It's not right, Jack." "No, it's not," I agreed, pulling her into my arms. "But it's not worth risking your job over. We need that insurance, especially with your mom's treatment coming up." Emma's mother had been diagnosed with breast cancer 3 months ago. The prognosis was good, but the treatment would be expensive, even with our help. Emma sighed against my chest. "Why didn't you say anything to him?" "What would be the point? Men like that, they don't see value in what I do. In his world, success means corner offices and golf memberships, not calluses and sawdust." She pulled back to look at me, her green eyes fierce. I hate that he made you feel less than. You're worth 10 of him, Jack Reynolds. I kissed her forehead. Come on, let's still go out. I've been thinking about that little Italian place all day. But the truth was, Blake's words had lodged somewhere deep, feeding insecurities I usually kept buried. Emma had been the smart one, the one with the college degree and career potential. I dropped out after 2 years to help support my dad when he got sick. By the time he passed, I'd already started apprenticing with a master carpenter and found I had a knack for it. Emma never complained about money, but I knew she'd grown up with more. Her father had been an attorney before the drinking took over. There were times I caught her looking wistfully at vacation ads or designer stores, and I wondered if she ever regretted choosing a life with me. That night, after we'd gone to bed, I heard Emma on the phone in the bathroom, her voice a harsh whisper. I don't care if he is your best client, Jen. You should have heard how he spoke to Jack. No, I'm not quitting. We can't afford to lose the insurance right now with Mom's situation. I know. Jen was her best friend, a real estate agent who had tried to recruit Emma into the business for years. I pretended to be asleep when Emma came back to bed, but I lay awake long after her breathing had deepened into sleep, staring at the ceiling fan, turning slow circles above us. The next morning I left early for a job in Highland Park, custom bookshelves for a retired professor. As I worked, carefully measuring and cutting the oak boards that would soon hold someone else's treasures, I kept hearing Blake's voice. Does he even have a job? Your wife deserves better. By the time I got home that evening, I'd resolved to let it go. Life was too short to dwell on the opinions of men like Robert Blake. Emma was quieter than usual that week. I noticed she stopped mentioning Blake in her daily recaps of office politics and meetings. When I asked, she shrugged and said he'd been traveling. A week passed. Life took its course. I finished the Highland Park bookshelves and started a kitchen renovation in Evanston. Emma's mother began her first round of chemo, and we spent Sunday afternoon at her small apartment, Emma cleaning while I fixed a leaky shower that had been driving her mother crazy. You've got a good one, her mother told Emma when she thought I couldn't hear. Your father wore fancy suits and look how that turned out. Jack's the real deal. On Friday evening, Emma suggested we try dinner at Salvatore's, the new Italian place downtown that had been getting rave reviews. We should celebrate, she said. I got the promotion to executive coordinator. It comes with a 10% raise. That's fantastic. I pulled her into a hug, lifting her off her feet. Why didn't you tell me sooner? She bit her lip. I just found out today. Blake called me into his office right before closing. He said my attention to detail and organizational skills had been noticed by upper management. Well, he got something right for once, I said, trying to keep my tone light. I'm proud of you. Salvatore's it is. The restaurant was smaller than I expected, but elegant, with exposed brick walls and soft lighting. The hostess led us to a table near the back, and I immediately felt underdressed in my clean but casual clothes. Dark jeans and a navy button-up that was the nicest thing I owned besides my wedding suit. Emma looked beautiful in a green dress I hadn't seen before, her auburn hair twisted into some complicated updo that made her neck look impossibly elegant. I told her so, and the smile she gave me across the table made every doubt I'd had that week fade into background noise. We were halfway through our main courses, seafood linguine for Emma, ossobuco for me, when I noticed her expression change, her eyes fixed on something over my shoulder. What's wrong? I asked, turning to follow her gaze. And there he was, Robert Blake, seated at a table near the window with a young woman who was definitely not his wife. I'd never met Mrs. Blake, but Emma had pointed her out in company photos, a dignified woman in her 40s with carefully highlighted blonde hair. This woman couldn't have been more than 25, with long, dark hair and a dress that emphasized every curve. When Blake saw us, he smiled sarcastically, raising his wine glass in a mock toast. The woman leaned in to whisper something in his ear, and he laughed, his eyes still on us. That absolute hypocrite, Emma muttered. That's Jessica from our marketing department. She's been with the company for all of 6 months. His wife is at a charity function tonight. She's on the board of the Children's Hospital Foundation. I helped him pick out a gift for their 15th anniversary just last month. Let's ignore them, I suggested, turning back to our meal. Don't let him ruin another night. Emma nodded, but the easy warmth of our dinner had dissipated. Blake's table was positioned so that I could see him in my peripheral vision, and I noticed he kept glancing our way, that same smug expression on his face. And suddenly, everything changed. A loud scream cut through the gentle murmur of conversation and classical music. Two masked men burst through the front entrance, guns raised. Panic erupted instantly. One of them fired a shot into the ceiling, plaster dust raining down as the sound reverberated through the small space. "Everybody down!" the shooter yelled. "This is a robbery! Wallets, jewelry, phones on the tables. Now!" The second gunman moved toward the register, shoving the hostess aside roughly. "Open it! Faster!" People screamed, some diving under tables, others frozen in shock. I met Emma's eyes across the table, saw the terror there, and reacted on instinct. I grabbed her arm and pulled her down, positioning us behind an ornate column that partially obscured us from the gunman's view. "Stay here," I whispered. "Stay low." Through the chaos, I saw the first gunman moving methodically through the restaurant, collecting valuables from terrified patrons, occasionally shoving his gun in someone's face when they moved too slowly. Most people were complying in silent terror. And Blake, the same one who had mocked me, lay under the table, trembling, clutching his companion's handbag to him like a shield. His eyes were like those of a driven rat, wild with panic. The young woman from marketing was pressed against the wall, sobbing quietly, mascara running down her cheeks. Blake hadn't made any attempt to protect her or comfort her. He'd simply dived for cover, using her bag as protection. I scanned the restaurant, assessing the situation with the kind of clarity that sometimes comes in moments of extreme danger. The gunmen were young and nervous, their movements jerky and unpredictable. The one collecting valuables kept looking toward the door, suggesting they had a getaway plan, or at least a getaway car. The second was keeping watch, his gun sweeping the room, finger on the trigger. Near us, an elderly couple huddled together, the man positioning himself in front of his wife. A young mother clutched her son, maybe 7 or 8, to her chest, the boy's eyes wide with terror. The bartender had ducked behind the bar but was peeking over it, his gaze fixed on something underneath, a phone maybe, or a silent alarm. The first gunman reached the elderly couple. "Rings, watches, everything?" he demanded. The old man's hands shook as he tried to remove his wedding band. "I'm sorry, it's stuck. I've worn it for 50 years. The gunman grabbed his hand roughly. "Don't make me cut it off, old man." Something shifted inside me at the sight of the gunman, manhandling an elderly man, at the sounds of a child's terrified whimpers, at Emma's sharp intake of breath behind me. My father had taught me that a man's job was to protect, not just his family, but anyone who needed protection. "Having strength means nothing if you don't use it to help others," he told me once. I noticed a heavy serving tray on the table next to us, abandoned by a waiter when the chaos erupted. The second gunman, the one watching the room, had turned toward the kitchen where a noise had startled him. I did what my heart told me. When one of the robbers got distracted, I seized the moment. In one fluid motion, I grabbed the heavy metal tray and stood. With all my strength, I threw it like a discus at the second gunman's head. The tray struck him with a resounding clang. He stumbled, disoriented, his gun hand lowering momentarily. I didn't hesitate. I launched myself at him, tackling him to the ground before he could recover. We crashed into a table, dishes shattering around us as we grappled for control of the gun. He was younger but smaller than me, and I had the advantage of surprise and the strength built from years of physical labor. I slammed his gun hand against the floor once, twice until his fingers opened reflexively and the weapon skittered away. The first gunman spun around at the commotion. "What the, Jimmy?" He raised his gun toward me, and my world narrowed to the dark barrel pointing at my chest. I heard Emma scream my name, a sound that seemed to come from very far away. That's when unexpected help arrived. A man in a business suit, who I later learned was an off-duty police detective, launched himself at the first gunman from behind. Almost simultaneously, the bartender emerged from behind the bar, wielding what looked like a baseball bat. The gunman, caught between two threats, hesitated for a critical second. His gun discharged, the bullet embedding itself in the ceiling. Then the detective was on him, delivering a practiced blow that sent the weapon flying. I maintained my hold on the second gunman, who was still struggling beneath me. "Stay down," I growled, applying pressure to his arm in a way that made him yelp in pain. Within moments, the detective had subdued the first gunman. The bartender was on the phone, presumably with 911, describing the situation in rapid-fire sentences. "Police are on their way," he called out. 2 minutes. Only then did I become aware of the pain in my side, a deep burning sensation where I'd caught the edge of a broken plate during the struggle. My shirt was torn, a thin line of blood seeping through the fabric. Emma rushed to my side, her face pale with fear. "Jack, are you hurt?" "Oh my God, there's blood." "It's just a cut," I assured her, though I hadn't actually checked the extent of the injury. "I'm okay." The restaurant was still in chaos, people crying, hugging each other, some still frozen in shock. I noticed Blake slowly emerging from under his table, straightening his suit as if trying to recover some dignity. His date was being comforted by another woman, her eyes still wide with terror. The sound of sirens grew louder, and within minutes the restaurant was swarming with police officers. Paramedics followed, checking for injuries. One examined the cut on my side, which turned out to be superficial, painful but not serious. "You got lucky," he told me, applying a bandage. "An inch deeper and you'd be heading to the hospital." As the police took our statements, the detective who had helped subdue the gunman approached me, extending his hand. "That was either the bravest or the craziest thing I've ever seen a civilian do," he said. "Detective Mike Hansen. Off duty, obviously." I shook his hand. "Jack Reynolds. Just didn't like seeing that old man roughed up." "Well, you probably saved lives tonight. Those two have hit 6 other places in the last month. Last time, they pistol-whipped a manager who was too slow opening the safe. They've been escalating." A female officer took Emma's statement, while I noticed Blake being interviewed by another officer near the entrance. He was gesturing dramatically, his voice carrying across the now quiet restaurant. "I was ready to make a move," I heard him say. "I was just waiting for the right moment to disarm them." The officer's expression remained professional, but I caught the slight raise of his eyebrow. As we prepared to leave, I noticed a young woman with a press badge interviewing the restaurant owner. A cameraman stood beside her, his lens sweeping the scene. "Sir," the reporter called, hurrying over when she spotted me. "I'm Alicia Chen with Channel 7 News. We understand you're the one who confronted the armed robbers. Could we get a statement?" I tried to decline, uncomfortable with the attention, but Detective Hansen clapped a hand on my shoulder. "This guy's a hero," he told the reporter. "Took down an armed man with nothing but a serving tray and his bare hands." Somehow I found myself giving a brief, awkward interview. Emma stood beside me, her arm linked with mine, pride evident in her expression despite the remnants of fear still visible in her eyes. "I'm not a hero," I insisted when the reporter used the term. "I just did what anyone would do." "Not anyone," Emma murmured, too quietly for the microphone to pick up. Her eyes drifted meaningfully toward Blake, who was now giving his own animated interview to another reporter. We finally made it home around midnight, both of us physically and emotionally exhausted. I winced as I removed my shirt, the cut on my side stinging. "Let me check that bandage," Emma said, examining the paramedic's work with a critical eye. "It should hold until morning, but you'll need to clean it properly tomorrow." As we lay in bed, Emma curled against my side, careful to avoid my injury. She whispered, "I was so scared, Jack, when I saw that gun pointed at you." I tightened my arm around her. "I'm right here. We're both safe." "Why did you do it? You could have stayed hidden with me." I thought about it for a moment. I couldn't just watch, not when I knew I could do something. She was quiet for so long I thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, "That's the difference between you and a man like Robert Blake. He talks about leadership and strength, but when it mattered, he hid. You don't talk about being a man. You just are one." I drifted off to sleep with her words echoing in my mind, a balm to the wound Blake's mockery had left. My name was in the news the next morning. Television, newspapers, the internet. Local contractor stops armed robbery, risking his life. The Channel 7 clip had been picked up by national networks, my uncomfortable interview playing on repeat throughout the morning shows. My phone started ringing at 7 a.m. Friends, family, even clients calling to check if I was okay and express their amazement at seeing me on television. By noon, I'd received calls from 3 other news stations wanting interviews and a request from the mayor's office about a potential civilian commendation. Emma's phone was similarly overwhelmed. Her mother called in tears having seen the news. Her boss, not Blake but the department head, left a voicemail checking on her welfare and telling her to take Monday off with pay. But the most surprising development came from social media. The restaurant's security system had captured the entire incident from multiple angles. Someone, I later learned it was the restaurant owner's tech-savvy son, had edited the footage together and uploaded it to YouTube with the title "Real Hero versus Fake Alpha. Watch how different men react during restaurant robbery." The video showed everything in high definition. The gunman entering, the initial panic, my calculated observation before taking action, the moment I launched the tray and tackled the gunman. But it also showed Blake in excruciating detail, diving under the table within seconds of the first shout, grabbing his date's designer handbag to shield himself. His expression of abject terror as he cowered while others were being threatened. Most damning was the split-screen comparison, me launching myself at an armed man to protect strangers, juxtaposed with Blake hiding under a table, using a woman's purse as a shield, his mouth forming the words, "Don't shoot me, take her jewelry instead," as he pointed at his young date. The video went viral overnight. By Sunday evening, it had over 5 million views and was being shared across every platform. The contrast was striking, and for many viewers, a perfect encapsulation of the difference between real courage and performative masculinity. The comments section was brutal. Table guy proves expensive suits don't make the man. Imagine being on a date and your man hides behind your purse. Construction worker, real man. Executive, real coward. This is why I date blue-collar guys. They actually have spines. Monday morning, Emma called me from work, her voice pitched with barely suppressed glee. "You won't believe what's happening here," she said in a hushed tone. "Blake came in wearing sunglasses and went straight to his office. Closed the blinds. His assistant says his phone has been ringing nonstop, but he's not answering." "The video?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "It's all anyone's talking about." The break room went completely silent when he walked past, and HR has called him in for a meeting this afternoon. About the robbery? About Jessica, his date. Apparently there are rules about executives dating junior staff, rules that are suddenly being enforced very strictly. By Wednesday, the video had expanded beyond social media to mainstream news coverage. A national morning show ran a segment titled "Viral Video Sparks Debate About Modern Masculinity," featuring interviews with psychologists and cultural commentators analyzing Blake's behavior versus mine. Someone had created a meme contrasting my image throwing the tray with Blake hiding under the table. The caption read, "When she says she wants a real man who will protect her." It had been shared millions of times. Blake had stopped coming to the office altogether, claiming to be working from home. But the internet is relentless. Someone had found and shared his LinkedIn profile, his company bio, even photos from his country club's website. His carefully crafted image as a tough, decisive business leader was being systematically dismantled by millions of strangers. How he hid under the table, covering his head with a napkin, how he trembled, how he whispered, "Don't shoot," while using his date as a shield. It was all being dissected, frame by frame, for the entertainment and judgment of the world. The situation took another dramatic turn on Thursday when I received an unexpected email from Martha Blake, Robert's wife. "Mr. Reynolds, we've never formally met, though I saw the security footage, and I know exactly who you are. I wanted to reach out personally to thank you for your bravery at Salvatore's last Friday. My nephew works as a line cook there. It's his first job since culinary school. Because of your actions, he came home safely to his mother, my sister. I also want you to know that I've seen the complete video, all of it, including who my husband was with and how he behaved during the robbery. I found out what kind of man he is. Now I know what a real man is. Robert and I are currently discussing the terms of our separation. After 15 years of marriage, it's not a decision I've made lightly, but some betrayals cannot be overlooked or forgiven. Please give my regards to your wife. She is fortunate to have a partner of such character. With gratitude, Martha Blake." I showed the email to Emma that evening, unsure how to respond or whether I should respond at all. "Poor Martha," Emma said, shaking her head. "Everyone at work always thought she was so lucky. Married to a successful executive, beautiful home in Winnetka. Perfect life. So the video ended their marriage?" I asked, feeling a twinge of guilt despite everything. Emma gave me a knowing look. "No, Jack. Robert ended their marriage when he decided to cheat. The video just made it impossible for him to hide who he really is anymore." On Friday morning, exactly 1 week after the robbery, Emma called me from work, her voice pitched with excitement. "Blake's been fired," she said without preamble. "What? Just for the video?" "Not exactly. After Martha left him, he came in today and completely lost it during the executive committee meeting. Started ranting about a conspiracy against him, how the company wasn't protecting his reputation. Called the female VPs vindictive bitches when they suggested he take a leave of absence. Sounds like a meltdown. It gets worse. He accused the CEO of setting him up, claimed there was a social media campaign to ruin him, Security had to escort him out. The company-wide email just went out. Robert Blake is no longer with Kellerman Pharmaceuticals, effective immediately. The news spread quickly through Chicago's business community. By that evening, it was being reported on local business websites. Executive fired after viral video shows him cowering during restaurant robbery. One particularly scathing article noted that Kellerman Pharmaceuticals could not allow a coward who had become the laughingstock of the entire country to lead its most important division. Over the following weeks, the media frenzy gradually died down. I declined most interview requests, though I did accept the mayor's commendation in a small ceremony at City Hall. My contracting business saw an unexpected boom. Suddenly, everyone wanted their renovations done by the hero contractor. I hired 2 assistants and had to start turning down projects or pushing them to later dates. Emma was promoted again, this time to executive assistant to the CEO, a significant step up from her previous role. Her salary increase meant we could finally afford to fix her car properly and start setting aside money for the house we'd been dreaming of building someday. As for Blake, he seemed to vanish from public view. Emma heard through office gossip that he'd moved to Arizona, trying to rebuild his career far from the scene of his humiliation. His LinkedIn profile was deleted, his social media accounts abandoned. The internet moved on to other viral sensations, other momentary celebrities. 4 months later, Emma and I were at home on a quiet Sunday afternoon when our doorbell rang. I opened the door to find a man I barely recognized standing on our porch. Robert Blake had transformed from the polished executive I'd last seen at Salvatore's. He'd lost weight, his once immaculate hair now longer and streaked with more gray. The designer suit was gone, replaced by casual clothes that didn't quite fit his frame. But it was his eyes that had changed most. The arrogance replaced by something that looked like defeat. "Reynolds," he said, his voice rougher than I remembered. "Can I talk to you?" I hesitated, then stepped aside to let him in. Emma appeared in the hallway, her expression shifting from surprise to wariness. "Robert, what are you doing here?" Blake stood awkwardly in our living room, looking out of place among our comfortable, modest furniture. I needed to. He seemed unable to find the words. I gestured toward the couch. "Have a seat." He sank down heavily, running his hands through his disheveled hair. "I lost everything," he said finally. "My job, my marriage, my reputation. I can't get hired anywhere in the industry. The video follows me everywhere." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. 4 months had dulled the edge of my resentment. "I'm not here for sympathy," Blake said quickly. "I don't deserve it. I'm here to apologize." Emma and I exchanged surprised glances. "What I said to you that day at Kellerman, about not having a job, about your wife deserving better, it was cruel and completely uncalled for. I judged you based on your appearance, your profession. I was wrong." He looked up at me, his eyes hollow with a hard-earned humility. "The truth is, I was jealous." "Jealous?" I couldn't hide my confusion. "Of what?" "Of you. Of what you have." He gestured vaguely around our modest home. "You've built something real. Your work actually matters. You create things people use, things that last. And you have a wife who respects you for who you are, not what you can provide or what you represent." He turned to Emma. "Every time you talked about Jack at work, the renovations he did for your mother's house, the custom kitchen he built for your sister's wedding present, I could see how proud you were. None of the women I dated, not even Martha, ever spoke about me that way." Blake stood up suddenly. "Anyway, I just wanted to say I'm sorry, for what it's worth." As he headed for the door, I found myself asking, "What will you do now?" He paused, his hand on the doorknob. "Start over, I guess. My brother has a hardware store in Phoenix. He's offered me a job. Not exactly the career trajectory I had in mind, but..." He shrugged. "Maybe I'll learn something useful for a change." After he left, Emma and I sat in silence for a long moment. "Do you think he meant it?" she finally asked. "The apology?" "Yeah, I think he did. Having everything stripped away has a way of showing you what matters." Emma leaned against me on the couch. "It's strange how one moment can change everything. If you hadn't picked me up that day, if we hadn't gone to that restaurant, if those robbers hadn't come in right then, if I hadn't thrown that tray," I added, "would you do it again, knowing everything that would happen?" I thought about it. Yes, not for the attention or the new business or even to see Blake get his comeuppance, but because in that moment it was the right thing to do. 6 months after the robbery, we held a housewarming party at our new place. Not the custom-built dream home we'd eventually have, but a significant upgrade from our starter house. The down payment had come from a surprising source, a book deal. A publisher had approached me about telling my story as part of a collection called Ordinary Heroes, Everyday Acts of Extraordinary Courage. I'd initially declined, uncomfortable with the attention, but Emma convinced me to reconsider. Your story might inspire someone else to act when it matters, she'd argued. The advance wasn't life-changing, but it was enough to help us move into a better neighborhood, closer to Emma's mother. The party was in full swing, our modest backyard filled with friends and family, when Emma pulled me aside. I have something to tell you, she said, her eyes shining. I wasn't going to say anything yet, but I can't wait any longer. She took my hand and placed it gently on her stomach. We're going to have a baby. For a moment, I couldn't speak, overwhelmed by joy and terror in equal measure. A baby? You're sure? She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. 8 weeks. I took 3 tests to be certain. I pulled her into my arms, careful not to squeeze too tight, though she wasn't showing yet. Emma, that's amazing. Over her shoulder, I caught sight of a framed newspaper article hanging in our new living room. The headline read, "Local Hero Stops Armed Robbery," accompanied by a photo of me looking uncomfortable in front of Salvatore's. I'd been reluctant to display it, but Emma had insisted. Our child should know what kind of man their father is, she'd said when hanging it. Looking at it now, I thought about the child we would raise together. A child who would never know Robert Blake or the moment that had changed our lives so dramatically. They would only know the aftermath. This home, the business I'd built, the family we were creating. Emma followed my gaze to the article. You know what's funny? If Blake hadn't been such a jerk to you that day, we might never have gone to Salvatore's that night. We might have chosen another restaurant. Everything might be different. Different how? Well, I might still be an assistant. You might not have expanded your business. We might still be in the old house. And I might not have realized quite so clearly what kind of man I married. I smiled, placing my hand on her stomach again, marveling at the invisible life growing beneath my palm. I'm glad you know now. I've always known, she said softly, but now the whole world knows too. And in her eyes, I saw something that weighed more than any money, positions, and status ever could. I saw love, respect, and the quiet certainty that she had chosen well, that we had built something valuable together, something no designer suit or corner office could ever provide. Blake had been right about one thing that day in the lobby. Emma did deserve better, better than the shallow values he represented, better than a man who measured worth by bank accounts and job titles, better than someone who would hide behind a woman's purse when danger threatened. She deserved someone who would stand up when it mattered, who would build rather than boast, who would protect rather than posture. And somehow, improbably, that someone was me.
The moral of the story. True character and masculinity are not defined by corner offices, expensive designer suits, or how much money you make, but by courage, integrity, and how you act in moments of crisis. Superficial arrogance easily crumbles under pressure, while quiet strength and genuine protective instincts reveal a person's true worth. Never judge a person by their work clothes, because real heroes don't need to boast. Their actions speak for them.